Hello there, everybody, and welcome to a special Valentine's Day edition of Circling South Sports on Converge. I say special, but I mean, we're not really doing anything different, are we?
No.
So,
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
yeah, there's that for you. I know the last few weeks it's been, the show is really busy. A lot of off-season news, a lot of this and that. Kind of slowed down this week, which I guess is an okay thing, but it just kind of feels odd after what we've been going over the last few weeks.
Yeah. It felt like it should continue on the rise that it was, but it feels kind of good to get a slow week. Nothing too major. So as we slide into our Seahawks segment here, Pete Carroll is hiring former Chicago Bears defensive coordinator Sean Desai as associate head coach for defense. He played with coached for the Broncos last season, and their defense allowed just 316 yards per game last year, and they ranked 6th in the NFL. I believe we previously mentioned that Donatell would be signing with Seattle, and he actually took the defensive coordinator position with the Minnesota Vikings. So no longer on the coaching staff there, not technically ever was, but no longer there.
Short tenure.
Yeah. The Seahawks have also fired offensive line coach Mike Solari and were expected to promote within. Running game coordinator Andy Dickerson will fill the role. Any comments on the changes here to our staff?
The addition of Desai, I believe, is Desai. We'll figure that out soon enough. The Desai addition, I think, is a good idea. I know that Brock Heward commented on it, said, "Oh, you don't want to have too many cooks in the kitchen." I think that's a stupid ideology in this relation, just because of the fact that if you look at any of these staffs, like we're going to look at the Super Bowl here in a second. Mm-hmm. The Rams have a really good staff.
Yeah.
And that you look at McVay, and that's great. But, without the defensive coordinator, the offensive coordinator, even like with what Donatell was hired to be in the senior defensive role, it's good to have these things all across the board. Like if we take it back a few years with the Seahawks in the Super Bowl years, right? I mean, you saw guys like Gus Bradley, Chris Richard. I'm forgetting his name, Gus Bradley. There's a lot of guys who are really talented in that staff that went on to become defensive coordinators elsewhere, or even get in Dan Quinn's case, Dan Quinn, bring the Falcons to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So to have that staff is important, and I think that his addition will be good. His status, his title is a little odd. I mean, associate head coach for the defense is something I've never actually heard before.
Right.
So that's new, but so at least in that regard, that gets my thumbs up. Donatell, I mean, senior defensive role, defensive coordinator position.
Yeah.
Unless he was like looking at it like a year or two left in the league, then I'm sure it'd be like, maybe it's fine to just like settle down. But a DC job, hey, why not?
Yeah.
So thank you, Ed Donatell, for your short tenure with the Seahawks. Mike Solari is a little bit of an interesting decision. The Seahawks offensive line has been the talk of the team for, as many years as we can remember with Russell Wilson in town. I think Seattle's only 2 pieces away on the offensive line from being a great offensive line. Dwayne Brown, re-sign him. Gabe Jackson and Damian Lewis are both solid guards, and I don't have any issue with them. It's the center position and the right tackle position that I believe need to be looked at. Do I think that you needed to fire Solari? No. But it is interesting that you're promoting from within with Andy Dickerson, who came over last year with Shane Waldron as part of the little Rams to Seahawks coach transition there. That one's a little. I mean, with the Donatell, I know I give the Desai a thumbs up. Donatell, don't really care. Solari, kind of down there. I mean, in between the sideways and the down. I don't know. I didn't feel like it needed to necessarily be a thing. Yeah. But I guess when we looked at the season in review, it's like if you want to get better, you need to upgrade, right? You don't want to stay complacent. Maybe they're considering that an upgrade.
Yeah, well, hopefully Andy Dickerson has a good eye for those positions that we do need and can bring in some good people to our OL. In other news, Russell Wilson did reiterate that he wanted to stay with the Seahawks. I think he was blatantly asked if he asked to be traded, said no, that he wished to stay. So that's good news. What's the look for?
Salman can preach on this. I mean, if he remembers it. I mean, you in the time you've been here, I think anybody who's been watching the show knows how I feel about the Russell Wilson trade talks. It's a non-story. It's been a non-story until Russell Wilson looks into a camera like I am right now and says, I want to be traded. I don't want to be with the Seattle Seahawks. It's a non-story. It is just media playing it up.
Yeah.
It's a non-story, so that's why every time that gets mentioned, I'm just going to sit here and look at you. I'm just going to be like, all right, guys.
Well,
you don't even need to ask for my input on it.
Makes for good headlines for sure, but no, Russell does not want to leave. So we're hoping he stays for many more years. In unfortunate news, Adrian Peterson was arrested yesterday off of a domestic violence charge at LAX after an altercation with his wife on the airplane. They're expected to resolve it. She's not going to press charges, and it was just, I guess, a in-house thing that they want to take control of and not move forward with the charges. Not a good look for his image, though.
I mean, he's had issues for a while. I mean, we go back to the issue of the switch with his son and just some other things. When you signed him, I was always kind of a little skeptical just because of the issues that he's had in the past. But I mean, with considering the circumstance of his age and kind of bouncing around teams, I think this should kind of put the nail in the coffin of his career. Just like, give it a rest. I mean,
you think he's done with the Seahawks then? You don't think, or the Seahawks are done with him, I guess. Yeah.
I know the Seahawks tend to give people second chances. I mean, we could look at a number of different cases in that regard. But I don't know if he gets, a so-called third chance with this happening. I mean, it could have just been an argument, but what I read about it was that there were bruises that were left. So I would just want to stay away from that and not give him another contract.
Yeah. And congratulations to our division rivals. The LA Rams are Super Bowl champions. They defeated the Bengals last night. Congratulations to them. They are now, again, Super Bowl 56 champions. Unfortunately, there was a bit of injury there last night. So Odell Beckham did suffer an ACL tear, but that was fairly early in the game. So I guess it was kind of a silver lining that they did win after an injury.
I mean, it's kind of like if we look at the Super Bowl in 2011 between the Packers and the Steelers, Charles Woodson, who had like a defensive player of the year type of year, went down in the first half, So, I mean, they went and won it. Ultimately, I mean, if we're going to look at this Super Bowl, I'm not impressed, nor did I expect anything less. As soon as that trade was completed for Matthew Stafford, the Rams were considered Super Bowl. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. They were considered Super Bowl favorites. And so this is just like, oh, is it impressive? No. Why would I be impressed over something that you're expected to do, right? It's like if I go and, complete my article for a game and I was like, hey, are you going to thank me or congratulate me? It's like, I expected you to do it. Why would you, I mean, it was a good game. Cincinnati put up a good fight. Especially for being kind of a team of destiny kind of thing. Obviously their offensive line issues showed, and maybe Seattle can take some things away from that. But one of the main things that I want to talk about, you talked about the injury to Odell and how, I mean, that could have hurt them really until they bounced back and finally started hitting Cooper Kupp. That Skoranek had a pass go through his hands, ended up being an interception. It's like, would Odell have made that catch? I'm sure he would, right? Was that a headline dropped. I'm going to say headline because it's essentially a rumor. Rodney Harrison reporting before the game that Aaron Donald told him that if the Rams were to win the Super Bowl, that he would strongly consider the possibility of retiring and stepping away from the game. Now, I put this out of the realm of possibility simply because it's not like Aaron Donald is Tom Brady's age and he's done. He's got no gas left in the tank. Aaron Donald is, generally considered now, the greatest defensive player of all time, and was doing that before he won the Super Bowl. To be only the second player to win 3 Defensive Player of the Years in the Super Bowl, joining Lawrence Taylor. I mean, that's rarefied air, and what he continues to do is rarefied air. Do I think he'll step away? No, I've been wrong about people stepping away from the game, a la Tom Brady, but I don't think it makes sense unless we see it's like Barry Sanders, like in the height of his career. I'm done. He just won a Super Bowl. I get wanting to go out on top, but I think that might have been just a little bit of drama, nerves,
Yeah.
just how dramatic that loss to the Patriots was, only scoring 3 points and just kind of being underwhelming. I'm sure that might have been just got a little exaggerative.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's going anywhere. But that would have been nice to not have to deal with Aaron Donald 2 times a year.
That was a great performance by him last night. Really actually sealed that win for them with that defensive stop on Joe Burrow. So with him playing that well, I don't see him giving that up anytime soon.
We would be remiss to not talk about halftime. We would be remiss to not talk about halftime. I wasn't sure how to expect it. I know that there was a lot of hype around it just because of who was going to be performing. 50 Cent, a surprise addition to that. I was like, oh, there's 50. I thought that was really cool. I know that there are some folks who didn't particularly like it, who didn't understand. I thought it was cool. I mean, to see one of my idols, see Kendrick Lamar up there was great. I know Dr. Dre had a really cool before he started playing the piano, he had a little Tupac reference in there, which is really cool to see. But also some of the things that some of the performers were told not to do. Snoop Dogg was told not to wear any blue.
Yeah.
Eminem was told not to kneel. What else? I think Dr. Dre was told not to mention the cops line.
Yeah.
So good for them, really, truthfully. I thought that was great. I enjoyed it. It's always tough with Super Bowl halftimes because you always kind of wonder, after a really good one, how can you top it? Like, I mean, you look at Prince's performance. How do you top that kind of thing?
Which they're still saying is probably the best one, and there's not much argument there.
I wouldn't argue with that, especially in the pouring rain.
Yeah, exactly. Playing Purple Rain.
So, but yeah, I mean, I always will tune into a Super Bowl. I don't care if we're not playing in it. It just sucks. Like that, going back to that Rams Super Bowl that was the most boring Super Bowl I've ever watched. To go from watching the Eagles Patriots game, which was one of the more exciting ones, to that, I'm like, oh. And luckily this was a good game, because I know, like, the Seahawks Super Bowl win, everybody was pissed because it was a blowout.
Yeah.
If it's a blowout, it's like, okay,
right.
Am I paying it? It's like I slouch. Am I really watching this?
Although that second half started a little slow, it felt like.
Well, yeah, no, but I mean, it was a good game, and I think overall it was a solid night, outside of the Rams winning.
And all of the several flags being thrown towards the end there.
We won't get into that.
Is there any update on the MLB lockout?
So there is no update on the lockout there. Not really. I mean, there's no real movement. We look at league notes. On the 12th of the month, the MLB said that, well, we have a little bit of it kind of ties into the lockout with what the players are fighting for.
Yeah.
A Major League Baseball lawyer says that minor leaguers should be considered trainees when they're in spring training and should not be paid for that time. So tell me, Bel, when you are training for an assignment, related to work, or even doing anything work related, do you want to be compensated for your time?
Of course. Yes. It's still time that you are putting in to perfect your craft. So regardless, I believe that they should be accurately compensated.
So, yeah, I mean, just to see like these younger guys, like seeing per se, like Julio Rodriguez or Jared Kelenic in spring training last year. I mean, to say, hey, those guys, they shouldn't be paid. Right. I mean, it goes back to the history that the MLB has, of not wanting to really fairly compensate the minor league players. I mean, a story came out a few years ago, I believe it might have been 20, it may have been 21, about the Angels minor league system where several players were sleeping in their cars, sleeping in the clubhouse, not getting enough to eat. And that, I mean, they could be a phone call away from going to the majors, and it could change like that. There's a story of Juan Soto with the Washington, the Nationals. His manager was saying, in the minor leagues, was saying, hey, we need you to sleep on an actual bed. We want you to be, sleeping good. So there's one point, but he's like, hey, I won't be here very long. In the next few days, he was called up.
Yeah.
So I mean, things can change like that. And to know that, hey, you could be sleeping in your car one day, and then the next you're making millions of dollars with an MLB club. It's one of the things that the Players Association is fighting for in this lockout. And do I think it'll be? I mean, I think you asked the question: is this going to be over anytime soon? I don't think so. That moves over to our next point from the 12th of the month. The MLB Players Association was unimpressed with a new deal offered at the meeting that the Players Association and the owners had on the 12th. The MLB and the Players Association still have not made much progress towards a new deal after that meeting. The Players Association was mainly unimpressed with the newest core economics proposal from the league. Is that any surprise? It's about money. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So spring training will be delayed because spring training is only supposed to start today.
Now.
Pitchers and catchers should have reported already,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think we even talked about this last week and probably the weeks before. Each week that the MLB decides that the owners want to decide that they're going to keep messing around and not give these proper compensation is weeks that you're losing money. We look at the Super Bowl, right? How many people you think watched the Super Bowl compared to the highest number watch game of any World Series in the last few years? I'm sure it's really high.
Yeah.
It's a high disparity. I think we talked about it a few weeks ago. There was a list of 100 highest viewed programs in TV in 2021. 75 of them were NFL games. How many of them baseball? None. I think basketball was on the list, but football and basketball were the only two sports on the list. It shows you, I mean, if we could look at the social medias for like the NFL compared to the MLB account. Here, let's do that really quick. I'm going to go to the NFL account, and we're going to see how big of a difference the NFL, it's the NFL has 23 million followers on Instagram. The MLB has 8. I mean, there's a difference, you know what I mean? And it's when the league does things like this, like with the lockout, it just drives people away.
Yeah.
I mean, if you didn't have it, take your sports knowledge, throw it away. If you maybe got a little bit interested last year with what the Mariners were doing, with winning a lot of games over expectation, and you're like, okay, spring training should be coming up, and then you heard they're locked out, you don't know when they'll be back. How likely are you to really, unless you're a diehard, are you to stay in contact? See?
And I'd be surprised to even know when that actual first game would start if I had no prior knowledge of it. So, yeah.
So I mean, that tells the story there. It's just an issue of this before the lockout. Baseball was nowhere near America's pastime anymore. That was great maybe in the 50s and the 60s, 70s. I think at that point you start to look at other leagues. The NFL starts to take over and really build. I wouldn't include soccer necessarily because it's more of the international game, and Americans still have trouble with that. But it's fallen behind, and we know why. There are a lot of issues with how this league is run. You want to have players be more engaged, be excited about things.
And it's not the first time that it's happened. So knowing that there's a possibility that it's going to occur again and again, not much hope for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So to answer when we think this will be over, I can't tell you, honestly. I mean, I would hope it happens before March. We're in the month of February. We're getting towards the midway point. Oh, no, we're at the midway point.
Yeah.
Do we think it's going to end this month? I'd say yes, but maybe buzzer beater towards the end of the month kind of thing. I don't know. I don't think we're going to start on time because I think the league has said we're willing to lose games.
Yeah.
It's like you're willing to lose money, that revenue. How much money Major League Baseball lost not having fans in the stands in a lot of money.
Which is the main argument.
That's why they postpone games, right? Like the NHL with the Kraken and COVID. They postpone because the players are affected. They don't care if like a few people have cases. I'll tell you personally, working in the store, we had a few people that had COVID. They don't care. If the players can play, they're going to play. That revenue is there to be made. It's all a money game. That's all it is. So, big frustration, big sigh, but I'm going to hold out hope that we can see something, I'd say around the last week of the month. To hopefully get us going at that regard. We'll have to do some sort of minor spring training. It'll be a weird start to the year. But hopefully, regardless of that, we can see our guys get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, disappointment there, but leading into some happier things with our Storm here.
Yes. So, Breanna Stewart was actually at Climate Pledge Arena on the 10th. She held a press conference there where she touched upon a few different topics. One of them that affected her decision, or not really affected, but it played part in her decision to sign a 1-year deal, was the WNBA's prioritization clause, which takes effect in 23 to 24, which is a big issue. Players like Breanna Stewart, who are playing overseas because it gets them more compensation, will now be penalized if they're not there for a training camp. So the first year they get fined for every day or game missed. And the second year, if they aren't at training camp, they can't play the season. Not quite sure how to feel about that, especially with someone like Stewie who makes money playing overseas. And obviously the WNBA isn't big enough yet that they can accurately compensate these big players. So they try to go somewhere else and make money, and now they're going to be penalized in the WNBA. Yeah, I'm just at a loss for words here.
I think I don't know if you saw it. I don't think we talked about it on the show here what Liz Cambage said a few weeks ago in regards to new Aces coach Becky Hammond earning,
Yes.
I think it's at least $1 million a year as a coach compared to what the players make with a supermax. A supermax
Right.
is like $250,000, right?
Yeah.
And that's a supermax,
Right.
you know. I think it comes down to the owners more so, and I think that the grant that we talked about, the $75 million they raised the other week, should help.
Yeah.
But hey, if I'm gonna make a lot of money playing in the off season overseas, why would I not do that, right?
Right.
And like a player like Breanna Stewart, why does it matter if I miss a week or so of training camp if I'm already in game shape? Right. And I'm already someone who's been around, and maybe I just need to get to learn some of the newer players. Why does it matter?
Right.
And that's an issue for the league itself to address, amongst other things. I know we talked about it when we talked about the $75 million. It's about you properly using that money, right? Like we talk about the jersey issue. You can make a lot of money off those jerseys if you actually were selling them correctly.
Right.
So it's another thing where I hope that gets taken care of. I know that she talked about not being happy about that. So, I mean, you'd think someone like Stewie steps up and says, it's like, oh, we need to look into that. We need to take care of that. Right.
Right. So. And like you said, for someone that of Stewie's caliber, who doesn't really need to be at training camp and is already playing games overseas, so she's never really not conditioned to play a professional game, it definitely doesn't seem reasonable. In better news, she did say that playing with Sue Bird also kind of made a decision, or not necessarily said that, but she did say that it was an honor to play with Sue Bird. It's been one of the greatest highlights of her basketball career to step on the floor with the greatest point guard to ever play, and that she's someone she obviously looks up to and respects a lot. So we're happy to have Sue back, and can only imagine that having her back definitely did affect Stewie's decision to come back. So that's good news. She's committed to Seattle, and the focus right now is, like you've said before, it feels like a championship or bust season, especially with all these 1-year deals. So hopefully they're able to get on the ball quick and just roll through the season and make it into the playoffs, and we'll see what happens with their future there. In free agency, she did say that it reminded her a lot of her high school recruitment. It was just an opportunity for her to see what other organizations are doing, and then bring it back to Seattle and see how they can do better. So that makes it seem like maybe she'll continue to prioritize Seattle. What do you think?
That was, I mean, just the quotes that we were able to get from the spring. I'm still stuck on spring training. On the press conference. It alleviated some stress that I had, where it's like, okay, I mean, I'd come to the decision, hey, if she leaves and we win a title after this, fine, whatever. I'll cry about it later, But with the way that it's talked about and the way that the prioritization was, so my 3 main points that I picked up on were the prioritization clause was the main one, that being an issue was something. The second one was being, it reminded me of when I was being recruited in high school to see what organizations were doing and then bring it back to Seattle and how we can do better.
Yeah.
That's 2. And then the third one, there wasn't a chance I was going to go anywhere else than Seattle. Those main quotes kind of like, okay, can breathe a little bit, I'm sure, because she also talked about how this next phase of her career, she wants to be a leader and really change into being a leader. what team is going to need a leader after this year?
We are. Yeah. So it's a perfect opportunity for her to step in, and she's really excited to play at Climate Pledge. So we're excited to have her back, and we're excited to get the season started. As I think that about covers it for the Storm. So let's go ahead and transition to our Seattle Sounders.
So, with the Sounders, I mean, for the past few weeks, it's been off-season news, this and that, and this, and signings, and this. Kind of a shift and change there. I know that these are two announcements that have been rumored and talked about after the season had ended, but we get dates on when they will actually become official. The first one being on the 15th, the Sounders are going to release their new kit for the 2022-2023 season. The MLS makes you create a new kit every 2 years, which is kind of weird. It's a money thing again. I'm sure it's jersey sales. So that will be released here on the 15th. That should be. There's rumors and there's been like a little tease that it'll have a checkered design similar to the MLS Cup in 2019, where 2019 Seattle was able to host that at home, and there was a checkered pattern. You ever see those stadiums where they hold up a bunch of cards in the stands and you can kind of see a pattern? They make a pattern of sorts. That's kind of the idea. It's supposed to be like, we've got the colors here on the studio, the blue and the green. It's supposed to be like a blue and a green checkered pattern on the front of the kit, and that'll be the main green kit. And the Sounders green has been sort of iconic throughout the time that they've been in the MLS. But it's something that has also been controversial, similar to Jimi Hendrix kit when that was released. People, why do the Sounders need a purple jersey? They don't wear purple. And everybody loved it and became really sold out. So here's what that's supposed to look like. You can kind of see on the screen. That was the checkered that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so there's supposed to be a pattern design like that on the new kit. Not confirmed yet. We'll find out about that tomorrow. But it's one of those things where it's even the name, the Kraken, like we go to that, people were like, why is it? It'll take some time, I'm sure, to grow on people, but
for sure.
It'll be gone. If they hate it so much, it'll be gone in a few years. So, I mean, there's that MLS rotation where
the new kit.
Yeah. So that, and then the other piece of information was that there will be a major announcement coming on the 16th in a few days. That hasn't been teased as much, but I'll tell you personally, from what I've gotten, my sources, that it's most likely a new training facility for the Sounders. This has been teased already. The Sounders currently trained with this new news. They trained in Starfire Sports in Tukwila, sharing that spot with the Seattle Seawolves, and it's already a multi-sport complex in general. So it could be the first step, and it would be and will be, I'm going to say, the biggest investment that the organization has made into the players to have your own training facility, right? It's like the Seahawks, borrowed some other training facility. You want your own facility so you don't have to worry about, we didn't get the 5:00 time to train. Right. Shoot, there's a little league tournament, which is great. I mean, it's cool to see the youth sports in it, but better to see, an actual training facility designed specifically for the team itself. And we may or may not hear that it might be a shared thing with the Reign. That could be a big deal, because I know that when the Reign had their Lumen Field announcement, they're like, hey, we're still training in Tacoma, but we're working on that. Yeah. That could, filter into there. But I'll tell you now, if you're listening to this before that and you haven't heard about it, if I'm a betting, I haven't used Sportsbook yet. I don't know when I will. If I'm betting, it's going to be a new training facility. So if take my word for it, we'll look at it next week. And if I'm wrong, I don't know, But so most likely what we're getting is we'll see the new kit. We'll show that next week. And then the training facility coming up there. So it's cool stuff. But I'm ready to get into the season, and we'll be able to get into the season. We finally have Sounders football coming up next week, February 17th at Matigua, the first Leagues Cup game for the Sounders this season, with a 6:00 Pacific time kickoff. That is a CONCACAF Champions League game. So we're getting into it finally. Regular season technically starts for Seattle on the 27th. against Nashville. So it's coming up.
Picking up,
We're
yeah.
going to see it here soon. Speaking of regular season, switching over to our Kraken here. I mean, it's when you have 2 games and you win one and you lose one, it's pretty down the middle, right? I mean, I can't say, oh, it was a bad week or it was a good week. It was okay, you know. February 9th at home versus the Arizona Coyotes. That rescheduled game that was supposed to take place on the 21st of December, losing that game 5-2, unfortunately. Player of the game would be winger Colin Blackwell with 1 goal, 1 point, 2 shots on goal, a hit, and 1 takeaway. On the 11th, traveling down to Anaheim to play the Ducks, winning that game 4-3. Player of the game number 1 would be Ryan Donato with 2 goals, 2 points, a 1+-, 5 shots on goal, and 1 takeaway. Donato, not scoring in a while, was able to have another great performance against Anaheim this year, similar to the last time the team traveled down to play the Ducks. And then player of the game number 2 would be Yanni Gourde with 2 assists, 2 points, a 2+-, and 4 hits. So it's a relatively decent week. I can't complain. I know over the weekend that the team had the skills challenge. I don't know if you saw anything about that. They released $10 tickets, and it was kind of like a fan fest sort of thing where you could come and they did hardest shot, or who could get their pads on the quickest, who could tape their stick the fastest. So general engagement like that is good to see, just to get those, just to grow the game of hockey in the city. Once again, I know that it's been a hockey town for a bit. I know that history of hockey has been here, but, with the NHL incarnation, cool to see that. And to talk about that, I know that UW men's hockey team goalie, they had a men's hockey, one of their goalies was there on site. So that was kind of cool to see them, tapping the city for that. As we move over to team news, I have one little thing here. The team claimed Dennis Cholowski off of waivers. He was originally selected by Seattle in the expansion draft way back then when that was a thing, but was claimed off of waivers in October by the Washington Capitals. Because the team has claimed him once again for a second time, he can now just be sent to Charlotte without having to be worry about waivers. And so he's been sent to the Kraken's version of their minor league team for this year, the Charlotte Checkers. Next year, they'll get their own team, the Coachella Firebirds. So with that being said, the Kraken now move to a 16-28-4 record, 16 wins, 28 losses, 4 overtime losses. So if we double that, 16 times 2, 32. And then the 4 overtime losses, you get 1 point. So that's where we come to the 36. Still sitting at 8th in the Pacific.
Still stuck in that 8th position.
Sad face. Looking ahead, the team plays tonight versus the Toronto Maple Leafs at 6:00. That'll be a good test there. Going on the road then to play their next 2 games on the 17th against the Winnipeg Jets in Winnipeg at 5:00, and then February 19th at the Calgary Flames at 7:00. So
hoping for a Valentine's Day win here.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Toronto is a good team. They've got a lot of talent. It's an hour earlier start, so it'd be a nice surprise. This is normally where we transition over to our Oil Reign, but similar to really the kind of like the Mariners and the Storm to an extent and the Sounders, there's not much going on. The Reign have returned back to the Seattle-Tacoma area to continue training, but outside of that, that's kind of it. So with that being said, is it weird for you at least to look at a shorter week? Because in the last few weeks, we've had a lot of signings and releases and news to kind of look at. Now it's like, okay, we're going to pump the brakes a little bit as we're still in this sort of awkward February month where things don't necessarily happen as much. And then March and April, they kind of pick up again.
I think it's a nice little refresher. The calm before the storm for sure.
Storm tie-in. There you go. Bel Garcia. She'll be here Mondays. I would say all week, but we're only here on Mondays. So yeah, with that being said, we will see you back next week. What's that, the 21st, if we're doing math? Am I doing math correctly?
I think you are, yeah.
College education. Thank your directors as always. Salman behind the camera, the lights, everything, making me look better.
Yes. Thank you for that, Salman.
Bel will not be returning. No, I'm kidding. We'll see you next week. Take care of yourself. We're getting some sun here, so enjoy that. This is kind of the fake spring time of the year where we'll get all this sun. Don't get too excited because the rain will be back. I
It'll
assure you
come.
of that. We'll get summer here in a little bit. We'll see you back next week. Take care of yourself and be well.